Do you remember these picture days?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And this is just out of the front door of this building.
It was an innocent time in our lives.
This is day 9. This would have been the 8th grade. The pictures were taken at the very start of the school year. This would have been in the fall.
September of 65, right.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So she would have gotten this picture and then passed away a few months later.
Yes.
Within weeks.
And it's just like all those things that she probably dreamed about just stopped that day. My name is Darlene Farmer Ostermeyer. I'm currently vice chairman of the Falls in the Colorado Museum that tries to depict the Central Texas era through time.
What is the significance of this building to you?
This building is actually the heartbeat of Marble Falls. It became the first school for Marble Falls in 1907. Can you imagine all of the feet that have walked on these wooden floors? That to me is just telling.
We've been looking at the case from 1965. You were related to Danon, right?
Yes, she was a second cousin. Her grandmother and my grandmother were sisters. She was a couple of years younger than I, and she had beautiful blonde hair, and she was extremely quiet. I mean, she bordering on shy.
What did you think when you heard what had happened?
I think Danon was such an innocent soul. It kind of shattered our family. I heard she was found hanging, that she had hanged herself with a rope, and it just didn't make any sense. A young girl that probably had thoughts of grandeur and growing and high school and dating and all those things, so much in front of her that it just didn't seem conceivable.
Then in the years since, have there been thoughts about what could have happened?
My grandmother had certain theories, and some of them are very unpleasant to think about. I think she probably knew of some undercurrents that I was not privy to as a 15-year-old, one of which might be the truth, other than what was listed on the death certificate.
You know, the fact that it was ruled an accident doesn't sit well with a lot of people.
My family always thought something wasn't quite right. Maybe we could have gotten some different and better answers, and maybe we could have found the truth.
Not far from the old schoolhouse, which is now the museum, Backbone Creek snakes through the city, just feet from where Danon Lewis lived and died in 1965 in the Burnett County Precinct, overseen by Justice of the Peace C.B. Wall. Danon was buried less than 48 hours after her death. Judge Wall closed the investigation a week later, never ordering an autopsy, which would have provided medical proof of how she died.
And the expert tells us a justice of the peace today would be far more likely to order an autopsy in a case like this.
My name is Judge Rick Hill, Brazos County Justice of the Peace, Precinct 3.
What are the qualifications to be a justice of the peace in Texas?
To get elected JP in the state of Texas, basically you have to have a pulse, all right? You have to be 18 years of age. You have to live in the county for 12 months, in the precinct that you're going to serve for 6 months, not be a convicted felon, and be mentally competent. And so as long as you can keep getting elected, you can stay in office.
There are many JPs in Texas.
About 900 JPs in 254 counties.
JPs date back 200 years in Texas. Archives reference them well before statehood, since the earliest days of the colony, introduced by a man known as the father of Texas, Stephen F. Austin, in 1824.
Justices of the peace historically are individuals in a community where if a cow wandered over into somebody else's property and there was an argument over who the cow belonged to, went to a justice of the peace.
How has the justice of the peace system evolved?
90% of all the cases filed at any level in the state of Texas are filed at our level. We do small claims cases. We do all the evictions in Texas. We do truancy, counties that don't have a medical examiner's office. We do the death inquests.
Texas is unique with that last responsibility. Many states primarily use elected or appointed officials called coroners who have some training to investigate and certify deaths. Some primarily use medical examiners, doctors who've studied forensic pathology to conduct autopsies for that purpose. And a handful of states primarily use other elected officials to act as coroners, including Texas, which is the only one to specifically utilize justices of the peace. There are medical examiners here, but only in 14 counties. The rest rely on JPs to carry out that coroner role on top of all their other duties. They're not required to have medical training like a doctor, though they can contract for autopsies in counties with medical examiners or private entities, but often that does not happen. Take Burnett County, where Danon Lewis died. In the past 5 years, JPs there have investigated nearly 800 deaths, deciding to send fewer than half elsewhere for autopsies.
When an unattended death happens, we have final say over everyone on whether an autopsy is done or not. We consult with law enforcement, medical personnel, family members, and given the circumstances, we order autopsies or not. You know, if it's an unnatural death, suicides, homicides, traffic fatalities, young people who really we don't know what happened, you order an autopsy.
But sending out for autopsies can be costly. We've seen counties pay as much as $4,700 per body. That decision is why, in part, JPs rely on the Texas Justice Court Training Center, where Judge Rick Hill teaches the many responsibilities of this role.
Every Justice of the Peace goes through 80 hours of initial training, and then we are required by law to get 20 hours of concurrent training every year.
Does that include death investigations?
Almost every training has some sort of death investigation piece. What we teach judges is, given the circumstances, are you comfortable enough coming up with a manner of death, cause of death? We train judges to say, you know what, if an autopsy is needed, you order one. Back in the day when the training center wasn't in existence, JPs were elected to office. You got the keys and it was like, good luck, here you go. From 1965 to today is like the dark ages to the modern world.
In 1965, the training center didn't exist. In fact, it was only that year Texans first had a way to officially complain about judges through the newly created State Commission on Judicial Conduct.
You can actually report judges for conduct that you think would be not becoming of a judge. There are some judges who have been removed from office, suspended from office.
In fact, the commission's handed down more than 400 disciplinary actions against JPs since 2001, some related to death inquests.
What do you say to people who say it's time to change the way Texas determines cause and manner of death, that it's a process that shouldn't be left up to justice of the peace?
You know, I don't know what that would look like because hundreds of JPs do inquests. I would think that that boils down to resources. There are counties that have become quite populous and JPs are doing lots of inquests.
That's one reason a handful of Texas counties, including Judge Hill's, are now choosing to fund their own medical examiner office in the near future.
State lawmakers made it tougher in recent years to require more counties to get a medical examiner, but after our questions, that could change next legislative session.
The needs for having a proper medical examiner is something that is unfortunately in demand.
Your JPs are being overwhelmed because of the workload that they have. Well, then it's time to take action.